All right, we are live in beautiful, sunny Florida. And today, fight fans, we are going to be breaking down UFC 223, Holloway versus Nurmagomedov in Brooklyn, New York. And yes, guys, that is Holloway versus Nurmagomedov. If you haven't heard the news and you're just hearing it now, you're probably like, what the hell is he talking about? But yeah, Max Holloway, the featherweight champion of the world, is going to be stepping up on a week's notice to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov for the undisputed, yes, the undisputed lightweight championship of the world. We could see another champ in a matter of a 2-year span, something that's never been done before. Could happen again here this Saturday night, man, and that's just an unbelievable fight. We have an amazing championship rematch between Namajunas versus Jedrzejczyk. This card's absolutely loaded, guys. Probably the best of the year, and we couldn't have an absolutely stacked card like this without a couple of really great guests. And I'm really happy to have both of these guys back on returning. We got Will Martin. I'm sure you know this guy. He's a pioneer in the MMA YouTube scene, and I'll say that. He's one of the best around. And then we got my boy Trademark MMA, Max. He's back. He was on the 220 Roundtable. He killed it last time. Had to have him back. What's going on, guys? Will, what's going on with you? What do you think of this card?
Love the card. I mean, it's been a quiet couple of weeks for fights. But I'm really enjoying the kind of getting back into fight week and having a run up to a really special card with really solid fights and close fights all the way through as well. So looking forward to talking some fights and just looking forward to getting back to the usual ritual of watching fights early into the Sunday mornings.
For sure. Max, what do you think of this card, man? And how you doing, by the way?
I'm doing great. I'm real excited for this card. Been that lull for the past 2 weeks without a UFC card. But Kelton, want to thank you again for inviting me back. Been looking forward to coming back ever since we had that UFC 220 breakdown in January. And well, I know we've never met, but I've followed you for a long time. I know you have some great insight from the sport, and looking forward to breaking down this card with you two gentlemen.
Absolutely, man. So got to go over the last bets I had on the last UFC, which was Volkov Verdum. First bet of the night, I had Leon Rocky Edwards, won a very solid decision there. Second bet, my big underdog, Jan Blachowicz. How about Jan Blachowicz really turning around in the light heavyweight division? That guy's been on a run. He catches a big underdog for me. And then, unfortunately, Fabricio Verdum lost for me. So 2-1 in the night, I did profit, but we're looking to step it up a little bit here, man. So we're going to start out with the first fight of the night, and it's a cracker. We got Zabit Magomedsharipov, biggest favorite of the card, now minus 850, taking on Kyle Bochniak, plus 575. And I'm going to start out with Will on this one.
I say this every time that I get asked about this fight. I just can't believe it's the first fight of the night, because I think they should be building this Zabit kid up. I think he looks a legit prospect coming through. And the two fights he's had in the UFC I've been really, really impressed with. He handled Mike Santiago very easily, I thought, and then he faced a really tough guy, I think, in Shimon Moraes. So I think it's a really solid fight, and he will show that he's a really good fighter in the UFC. Love his striking. Also love his really, really high level game with his grappling. Showed that in his last fight, especially when he decided to change it up, and he wanted to change up, he did so very, very easily. Loved that he was hanging off Moraes and he was carrying all that weight. And then when the coaches of his were asking for a finish, he duly delivered in the last minute of the fight. Just super impressive. I think that Kyle Bochniak is a really good fight for him, for the fact that I think he's going to win a hit and move, but I think that Zabit is really good at cutting off angles of the cage, just for his massive frame. And I just think that Bochniak, eventually, he might start off well, but I think Zabit's going to start picking him apart. I think he's going to start getting him in the clinch. I think he's going to take him to the ground. I think a finish is going to come, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. I'm not sure where, but I think I can see a finish maybe late round 2, early round 3 for Zabit there. But it's like I say, this is a big opportunity for Bochniak. If he can come out here, start quick, get that respect early, then he could pull off a big shock. Yeah, I'm just struggling to see it myself, so I'm going to go Zabit with a stoppage late in the fight.
Yeah, man, I think the hype on Zabit Magomedsharipov is absolutely warranted. I think this dude is very special. And when you look at the up-and-comers in MMA, you look at guys like Max Holloway, you look at prospects like Israel Adesanya, you look at these lanky, kind of long, rangy guys. It used to be in the UFC, oh, the strongest, the biggest, the brutish guys are going to win. But it's really these taller, lanky, rangy guys that have really been coming in and doing well in the sport. And I think Zabit just he matches his style so well with his body frame. He does everything so fluidly. He's really one of the best prospects in MMA today. So I do think the line is warranted for sure. You got to be a little careful. You do have to think worst case possibilities. Like, this isn't the first undefeated Russian we've seen come to the UFC and kind of blow it. I mean, you look at Magomed Bibulatov against John Moraga. Magomed came in a huge favorite, got knocked out by Moraga. But you look at worst case scenario there. He's untested. Magomed, that is, was untested against a really good striker. Moraga came in. He showed him what's up. Now, what's worst case scenario here? What is Kyle Bochniak really good at? He's well-rounded everywhere. He's a good striker. He's a good grappler, but he doesn't really have that lethal striking game. He's not super sneaky from the bottom. So I don't really see a fluke KO or a fluke submission here. What Kyle Bochniak is really good at is squeaking out those really tight decisions and making fights closer than they really should be. Now, I just simply think that the skills of Zabit is way higher than the skills of Kyle Bochniak. So I don't even know if Kyle's going to be able to make this fight as close as he usually does. Like that Enrique Barzola fight, come on, you can see from tape how much better Enrique Barzola is than Kyle Bochniak. It's just Kyle Bochniak's style. He's so good at making the fights close. I just think there's levels to this game, and Zabit Magomedsharipov is levels above Kyle Bochniak. So I think the line's warranted. I don't really see a path of victory for Kyle Bochniak, and I'd like to hear somebody argue otherwise, but I'm going to go with Zabit Magomedsharipov here, and I say he gets it done by TKO in round 2. Max, what do you think of this one?
Well, I'm not going to be the one to argue that Kyle Bochniak has a line of victory in this fight, because I agree with both you guys, and definitely interesting to see that this is the curtain jerker for the card, because you'd expect, especially given the notoriety Zabit Magomedsharipov has been garnering, that maybe it'd be the UFC Fight Pass prelim headliner, or maybe even the televised prelim headliner. There's not a lot of guys lining up to fight Zabit, and that's for good reason. But I do love the mentality that Kyle Bochniak has had in taking this fight with the huge opportunity that it is to knock off a guy like Magomedsharipov. And we've seen from Kyle Bochniak, he's not afraid to go in there against anybody, and he is willing to go for broke when he gets in there. And he is coming off his best performance to date against Brandon Davis at UFC 220. Then again, he was fighting a very one-dimensional striker in Davis. But you like to see that attitude, and that he's going to bring that to that fight to Zabit Magomedsharipov, kind of like Mike Santiago did in their UFC debut. But just to echo what you guys have said, Zabit has been extremely impressive, not to the point where he's ready for the top of the division yet, but this will be a good test. And given his size, his technical advantage, his coaching under Mark Henry, Nick Catone, I think from there he's able to control this fight pretty easily and get it to the ground and eventually nab a finish. I'm going to go with Zabit Magomedsharipov, a submission in the 3rd round.
All right, so moving on to the next fight here, man. We got Devin Clark, -115, taking on Mike Rodriguez of the Tuesday Night Contender Series, and he's coming in as a -105 here. And I'm going to start with Max on this one.
Yeah, so light heavyweight, no secret, it's a thin division in the UFC these days. So anytime you have a fresh face, a guy like Mike Rodriguez, there's always going to be a little bit of excitement to go along with it, especially coming off of his highlight reel knockout on the Contender Series over Jamel Jones. He's intriguing as anyone because he's that tall and rangy, and he has those flying knee knockouts on his record. I think it'll really complement him well that he was able to go through this fight camp with his head coach, Joe Lauzon. Definitely have him prepared for the mental aspect of the UFC. And I like him in this matchup, as I really haven't been all that impressed with Devin Clark over his last few appearances. Even if his wins over Josh Stansberry and Jake Collier, I thought he was a little bit sloppy at times. And then he was especially sloppy coming in against Jan Blachowicz. Really tried to rush his takedown attempts, really overextended on his strikes. For me, I think Rodriguez, given the kind of hype and the excitement out of a new fresh face in the light heavyweight division, that I can see that carrying him, and I think he's going to land a big shot early on and put Devin Clark away. I'm going to go with Mike Rodriguez first round knockout in his UFC debut.
Yeah, man. I'm excited about this guy, Rodriguez, too. I was extremely impressed with him on the Contender Series. I like the camp he trains at. And like I was just talking about with these tall, lankier guys, that's kind of where the sport is headed. That's kind of what you want to be. You want to have that length on you. You want it because range is one of the most underappreciated things in MMA. That's really the key to a fight, especially on the feet. On the feet, anyway, is keeping that range, managing that distance. Just to give you a little bit of a reference, Mike Rodriguez's reach is only 1 inch shorter than Stefan Struve's. The dude is extremely lanky, and he knows how to use it, man. I mean, we're not talking about a top 10, 15 guy here, but like Max mentioned, Devin Clark has not looked too good lately. He's got that wrestling background. Dude can wrestle his ass off for sure, but the dude can also go out there and get bulldog choked by a Polish striker. So can you really trust Devin Clark here? I'm not so sure. Would I be surprised if Devin Clark went out there and put on a wrestling clinic on this guy? I don't think I would, but Mike Rodriguez does actually have an underrated submission game, especially defensively. So I don't know, man. I think even if Devin Clark is able to go out there and get those takedowns, that fight IQ might be a problem. He might get caught by something from the bottom. So I kind of like Mike Rodriguez wherever the fight goes here. That being said, I just see such a big wrestling advantage that makes me want to stay away from Mike Rodriguez, I should say. I just feel like Devin Clark is such a big advantage there and probably could grind this out. But I am going to actually go with Mike Rodriguez here. I'm going to say he gets it done by finish. Like I said, pass, but I like Mike Rodriguez from a DraftKings perspective because I feel like if he does win this, it probably will be a finish. So I'm going to go with Mike Rodriguez. I will say finish in the second round via TKO, and I'll be having a little bit of him in DraftKings. Will, what do you think in this fight?
Yeah, I'm with you guys here. I think that for me, Devin Clark's too one-dimensional. I think that he doesn't have a plan B if things are going wrong, and I think that showed in the Blachowicz fight a little bit, where he really just tried to stifle Jan against the cage, and in the end, it was really his downfall. And I'm really impressed with this Rodriguez guy. I think that there is opportunities for Devin Clark to get him to the ground. It's whether he can keep him there and establish a top position where he's going to keep him there. I think this Rodriguez guy is really athletic. You can see that he's got a lot of power, and that first flying knee knockout on the independent scene is one crazy knockout. It was a vicious knockout. He's got that in his arsenal. It could show at any time. But I do see Devin Clark potentially getting him down. I just don't think he's going to keep him there. And I think once he starts to fade, I could possibly see Rodriguez maybe sweeping him. And maybe we've seen in his fights on the independent scene, the regionals, thinking of wrestling there. I'm actually watching the wrestling there, that's why it's throwing me off. He's caught people in triangles and got in top position and pounded guys out. I'm going to join you guys. I think he's going to stop him. I think it's going to be sloppy in the first round and a half, but I think that big vicious power that he has, I think it's going to catch him, and he will put him out inside probably the second round, I'm guessing.
All right, so moving on to the next fight here, man. We got Ashley Evans Smith, -200, taking on Bec Rawlings, +170. I'll start out with this one, man. This is my first play of the night of 3, and I am indeed fading Bec Rawlings here for a number of reasons. So this is going to be her, I believe, second fight at flyweight. I thought she looked a little undersized against Jessie Rose Clark. Her wrestling defense didn't look so good. And if we're being honest here with Bec Rawlings, she's a loser. She has lost half her fights. She is 4 losses, 2 wins in the UFC, and 5 losses, 2 wins in the UFC if you want to count tough there. So Bec Rawlings, she doesn't win fights. And the fights that she did win, go back, watch that Seohee Ham fight. I thought Ham clearly won that. And then her lone win, her best performance in UFC was a first-round submission over Lisa Ellis. I think I just saw Lisa Ellis at the local high school soccer game. So, yeah, don't hold that win in much consideration there. But the thing is with Bec Rawlings, man, I don't know if it's a mental issue, because sometimes she has shown moments where she didn't look so bad, but she loses fights. And the thing with Ashley Evans Smith here, man, I mean, we've seen much better moments out of Ashley Evans Smith. So looking back from her UFC record, she made her debut against Raquel Pennington, who was no easy debut at all. She did get submitted in the first round there, but if you really go back and look at that fight, she wasn't looking too bad. And I'm not even going to mention about how she knocked out a man. She knocked out a man in the regional scene, a 145-pound man. Then came next fight, beat Marion Renault. Whatever you think of that decision, a win over Marion Renault, that's impressive. Then what I see is a similar matchup here is Veronica Macedo, who was very undersized against Ashley Evans-Smith there, and Ashley Evans was able to use her biggest strength, which is her wrestling. She was able to take. And then Ashley Evans-Smith last two fights, Ketlin Vieira, she lost the decision there. I mean, in Ketlin Vieira, we're talking about a top 5 fighter. And then in her last fight, Sarah Morris, which is very underwhelming fight there. But the thing was with that's really just a bad stylistical matchup for Ashley Evans, because Ashley's weakness is her jiu-jitsu, and she can get caught, and she got caught by a very good grappler there. Now with Bec Rawlings, I don't think we have to worry about the grappling really at all with her being a striker. So I think with Bec's poor takedown defense, Ashley Evans' strength being her wrestling, Ashley should have no problem getting those takedowns, no problem holding her down, and no problem pounding her out. I like Ashley Evans-Smith here quite a bit. I think she gets Beck down and pounds her out. I think we're looking at something very similar to the Veronica Macedo fight. So I'm going to say Ashley Evans-Smith, 3rd round TKO. And I do have 4 units on her to win roughly around 1.8-ish. So, yeah, I got Ashley Evans-Smith big here, guys. So I'm going to pass this one off to Will.
Yeah, I'm not picking Bec Rawlings in a UFC fight. I don't care who she's against. I'm just not going to go there. I think the Jessica Rose Clark fight showed a lot of like the size discrepancy, and Ashley is quite a big girl. I think she's coming down from 135 as well, so she's going to have the bulk in this one. I think on the feet, I think it's pretty close maybe. But I think there is a definitive advantage with her on the ground. I think she can establish a dominant position there, and I think from there she will start. I think she has got some good ground and pound in that Macedo fight. She was hitting her with some really vicious shots, and she eventually got her out of there. The Jessica Rose Clark fight was just a big eye opener to me size wise. I think that Ashley's just going to be the same size. Get her down. Just beat that ass and get her out of there. And I don't really want to watch Bec Rawlings in the UFC anymore. Not saying that Ashley Evans-Smith is that great of a fighter herself, but I think she is better, far better than what Bec Rawlings is. And I'm never going to pick Bec Rawlings in a UFC fight after something. Literally, when you were speaking about her wins in the UFC, Lisa Ellis, like you were saying, she could be at Subway and she's giving me my lunch there, or Celie Ham. She was like that was a robbery, I thought, when I was watching that live. So I'm going to go with Ashley Evans-Smith here. I just think she's going to be dominant on the ground and she's going to stop her down on the ground.
And when we're talking about Celie Ham, we're talking about a fighter who should be fighting at 105 pounds, and she arguably beat Bec Rawlings there. Max, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm not picking Bec Rawlings in a UFC fight. I don't believe she really belongs on the roster. I will say this. She did look far more comfortable at 125 pounds than she did fighting at fighting at strawweight in that split decision loss to Jessica Rose Clark. But it's no secret, and speed has never really been a strong suit of Bec Rawlings. It'll be interesting to see how Ashley Evans-Smith handles that weight cut, because like you said, Kelton, she fought at 145 pounds outside the UFC, and I believe she even missed weight once in the UFC at 135 pounds. I'm not certain on that, and that might have been her UFC debut. But she has had some really good performances. Like you talked about the Marion Renault fight, really kind of outstruck Marion Renault, and look how well she's done since. And then completely controlling Veronica Macedo. I mean, very technical, very tactical with her takedown attempts and her approach there, very controlling on the ground. But she has shown susceptibility to those jiu-jitsu grapplers and making sometimes simple mistakes, like against Sarah Morris with the armbar, or when she got bulldog choked against Raquel Pennington in her UFC debut after completely dominating that first round. But I like the adjustments that Evans-Smith has made outside the cage, too. She's now working with Mark Munoz and training at Ruka Training Center full-time for this camp. And for me, I think she just has the ability wherever this fight goes. She has that kind of clean technical striking on the feet that really will outpoint Bec Rawlings. And Evan Smith being the wrestler that she is, I think she'll be able to secure those takedowns at will and control Rawlings on the ground. Beck will always fight to the bitter end. I mean, even though she may not be a UFC level talent, she is tough, and she'll hang in there. But I'm going to go with Ashley Evan Smith unanimous decision.
All right. So moving on to the next fight here, man. This is a fun one. We got Alex Caceres minus 135 taking on Artem Lobov plus 115, and I will start with Will on this one.
The King of Ireland, Artem Lobov. I think it's a really good fight for Artem. I really do. I think this is a very, very winnable fight. When I was looking before this fight was announced, I'm thinking if Artem's kept in the UFC, who could you match him up with in winnable fights? And Alex Caceres is not one that really rung off to me straight off. But when I heard about the matchup, I was like, this is a really, really good fight for him. I think he can. The thing is with Alex Caceres, he sometimes fights really not to his strengths, and he goes out there and he just leaves everything hanging there. And I think this is where Artem's going to really find him on the feet. I think they're going to start trading off, and that's where Artem predominantly, when he does win fights, and when he did in the local scene over here in the UK and Ireland, it's just people playing him at his own game. If you mix it up with Artem, you can beat him majority of the time. But if you stand there and you want to throw some fists with this guy, he's going to be there. You're not going to take him out, and he's probably going to get the better shots off. Kind of like the Teruto Ishihara fight. That was the fight I thought if Teruto could mix it up at least a little bit, he could win that fight. Didn't do there. Stood there. He was like a rabbit in headlights. And then once he got into Artem's game, he just never even got close to getting out of that and changing the game plan up a little bit. I like Artem in this one. Whether he stops him or whether he doesn't, I don't know. But I think with King Connor outside watching him outside the cage, which I'm hearing he's going to be in New York for that, I think he's going to win. I think possibly a finish. I'm going to go a decision for the King of Ireland, Artem Lobov.
Yeah, I'm actually going to side with Will and go with the underdog here and Artem Lobov, man. So basically, I think if Alex Caceres fights the perfect fight, fights the fight he should fight, and comes to the best of his abilities, mental and physically, I think he should win this fight. I think he's honestly probably the more talented guy than Artem Lobov on the feet and on the ground. But we've seen a lot of problems with Alex Caceres. One being his chin, two being his fight IQ. We've seen Alex Caceres rocked more than a few times in the UFC here. And if we're talking Artem Lobov, we're talking about a guy who has punch in his he has pop in his punches, man. Knocked out Chris Gritzmacher on tough. And if we're gonna say anything good about Chris Gritzmacher, it's that the guy's actually a pretty tough guy. So that's a good win there for Artem Lobov. The dude does have pop in his punches, and I think if Alex Caceres goes in there, wants a little bit of a fun fight, tries to have some fun out there, then I think he's going to get caught with something. If Alex Caceres comes out and fights a smart fight, I think he could pick up a decision here. But I'm gonna go with Artem Lobov catching Alex Caceres here. We've seen him catched by Francisco Rivera. We've seen him get rocked all over the place by the last guy. So I'm going to go with Artem here. I agree with Will. He had a lot of good points. So I think maybe the first round of Alex Caceres, he does fight that smart fight that he should, picks up the first round, then tries to have a little bit of fun in there. And I'll go with this is the fun pick, Artem Lobov, second round knockout. Max, what do you think?
Yeah, so both of you guys, there are some points I agree with and some I don't. Lobov, while, yeah, he's a fan favorite for his style, he really hasn't shown that power he had on The Ultimate Fighter since his appearances on the show. In all five, I believe, 5 or 6 of his UFC appearances. He's been getting taken down constantly. I mean, whether it was Ryan Hall in the finale, Andre Fili in his most recent bout, Alex White in his second UFC bout. But I don't really see Caceres going to the wrestling or really trying to get this fight to the ground. But I do think Artem will have a little bit harder time catching Caceres than you might think. Lobov does have quite a short reach advantage, and he does tend to wing his punches, especially the later the fight goes. Lobov, I think, will land the harder shots, and I think he probably will have a little bit more success early. And I do agree, Alex Caceres, suspect chin. He's been knocked out before. He's been rocked many times in the UFC. But I just kind of like Caceres at range here. I think he's able to kind of keep Lobov away, use his kicks, use his longer punches, use his quickness to get out of the range of those long, loopy left hands that Lobov likes to throw. It wouldn't surprise me if Lobov catches him, puts him away. But for me, I think Caceres maybe loses the first round, but then comes back and able to kind of squeak out a split decision or a unanimous decision. I know it kind of goes against what we've seen of him with his early fight IQ being better than his late fight IQ. But for me, I just think he's going to be able to get on his bike and stay away from Lobov's big looping power shots.
All right. So moving on to the next one here. And one of the more, I shouldn't say the newest because we just got that new main event, but one of the newer made fights on the card. We got Evan Dunham, -140, taking on Olivier Aubin Mercier, +120. Max, we'll start with you on this one.
Man, this fight's really flying under the radar for me. This is a great fight to see where both guys are at in their careers. Evan Dunham, 5-fight unbeaten streak. He's coming off that draw, 216 to Neil Dariush. He really seems to be fighting more intelligently and implementing his offense much more tactically these days. He was completely dominant in those 4 wins over Joe Lauzon, Ross Pearson, Rick Lennon, Rodrigo Dam, I believe. And to me, that just seems that he's fighting a lot more strategically than he was when we saw him going against guys like Edson Barbosa and Donald Cerrone a few years ago. Meanwhile, Olivier Aubin Mercier came back from that Diego Ferreira loss with an absolute vengeance. I mean, he took out 2 very tough guys. Tony Martin and Drew Dober are no slouches. I mean, those guys are tough. They have many UFC wins collectively. And Aubin Mercier definitely is showing a lot of improvement since his early days. I think his striking is definitely far from perfect. Still has a long way to go, but it is coming a long way from his days on the Ultimate Fighter Nations. And I can kind of see this fight going with Dunham using his striking early and keeping the distance. But I also really just like the way Olivier Aubin Mercier has been mixing in his takedown attempts with his striking. And as we've seen with his judo background, his strength, he's really able to control the fight on the ground no matter who his opponent seems to be. So I think he's going to be able to ultimately get Dunham down. And just with that control, I don't know if Dunham's able to have an answer to that. I'm going to go 29-28 Olivier Aubin Mercier on the, I believe it's a betting line upset. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm struggling with this one. I'll be honest with you. I'm a fan of both guys. I think Evan Dunham is a really underappreciated fighter. I think he's a really smart fighter as well. The one where it really kind of stood out to me was when he fought Ross Pearson, and it was in Glasgow. I was there, and there was all this talk through fight week that it was going to be a bit of a war, which Evan Dunham at the time was kind of known for. And he came out and kind of flipped the switch and went to his wrestling and completely shut down anything Ross Pearson had. From any time he came forward, Evan Dunham took him down. And since then, I just think he's fought really, really smartly in all aspects of the game. There's times when you have seen him brawl a little bit with Rick Glenn. That was a fun fight, but ultimately he ended up taking him down. And one of the things when I was watching back fights is this guy's really hard actually to get taken down. He's not really easy to get down. I still think Mercier will get him down at some point because I think his judo is legit. I think he's got a lot of strength there. And but I think the kind of veteran savviness of Evan Dunham's going to find his way back to his feet. And I just think it's a very close fight. I really do. I loved the fight with Beneil Dariush. I think he was down early, came back really, really hard, showed that he's just a really tough guy to get past. I think off the top of my head, the last guy to take him down was Cowboy. He stopped him. That was a long time ago. I'm going to go the other way. Not confident in the pick whatsoever, but I'm going to go Evan Dunham, a split decision, very close split decision win.
Yeah, man, I think this fight is really awesome, and I love it from the angle of it's the veteran versus the up-and-comer. Olivier Aubin Mercier has shown some real improvements in his game. He's come a long way from that tough season. And Evan Dunham, man, I love this guy. He's first of all, I do believe he's in his prime right now, and it's really good. I kind of want to compare him to like what Jim Miller and Joe Lauzon were a few years ago, like a top 10, top 15 type gatekeeper guy who will beat most of those guys in the division, just not the top of the line. Thing is here, man, this is a really weird stylistic one. I kind of feel like Dunham will outstrike Olivier, although Olivier has made improvements in the striking. I just don't think he's quite there. What's really good about Dunham, man, is just that he's been in the UFC forever and he has all that experience. And I think his experience is really his the best weapon he has in his arsenal is that experience and that mindset. And really, I don't know if it's a matter of the guy's just lucky and his durability is just amazing, or if he's just been smart, training smart in the gym, because dude's been in the UFC for, I want to say, about a decade, maybe even longer now, and he's going out there performing like a 25-year-old still. Then again, still not a top 10, top 5 guy in my opinion, but very, very solid test for anybody, man. I mean, you put Evan Dunham up there against the top 5 guys. I'm going to pick those top 5 guys against him, but he's still a tough test against anybody. I kind of agree with both these guys. I do think at first Evan Dunham will get the better part of the striking and the fresh 100% stamina, I should say. Evan Dunham should probably stuff the takedowns, but as the fight goes on, I think Olivier Mercier might start landing those takedowns. The guy is freakishly strong. He is built like a brick shit house, and I feel like he should probably get Evan Dunham down. And I do see this being a very, very close split decision. I agree with Will. This fight is so tough to call, but I'm going to go with the experience here. I'm going to go with Evan Dunham. I think he's going to make the adjustments he needs to if Olivier starts getting those takedowns. I think it's his experience and the way he's been looking lately. I don't want to pick against Evan Dunham the way he's been looking, so I'm going to go with Evan Dunham also by split decision. I will say 29-28, but man, just because of the way I see the fight going, just so razor thin from a betting perspective, there's probably value on Olivier Mercier. The best line I see out on him is plus 125. I wouldn't hate that bet at all. I actually believe it opened plus 140. So if you caught that plus 140, I think that's a damn decent bet. So yeah, gonna ever so slightly edge Dunham, but I think this is a really tough one to call, man. So moving on to the next fight of the night, we were just talking about this guy earlier. We got Chris Gritzmacher plus 150 taking on Joe Lauzon minus 170. And I am going to start with this one. So this is interesting, man. I feel like it's pretty straightforward. You got Chris Gritzmacher, who may not be the most skilled fighter in the world. He doesn't really have that great of striking. His jits game is not very on point. We've seen him subbed more than a few times. It's really just he's a workman guy. He has decent cardio, decent wrestling, and he's a tough son of a gun. But the thing is with Joe Lauzon, make no mistake about it, is still a dangerous man in that first round, and I think he has a very good shot of finishing Chris Gritzmacher here early in the fight. I think he could land some good shots, knock him down, sub him. I think he could take Gritzmacher down and sub him. I think a fresh Lauzon has a gigantic shot here, but I think this is a really great live betting opportunity because what we've seen from Joe Lauzon lately is the guy's gas tank is just not up to par, man, especially if he goes out there trying to blow his wad finishing Gritzmacher earlier. I think if it hits that second round, you might want to put a live bet on Gritzmacher no matter how that first round went. Because Gritzmacher, like I said, man, he's a tough guy. Lauzon gasses, and I think we could see a situation of a 29-28, Lauzon first round, Gritzmacher 2 and 3. I think it's kind of a straightforward breakdown there. I think Lauzon first round finish or bust. If it hits that second round, the fresher Chris Gritzmacher actually will probably get some takedowns, beat Joe up on the feet, maybe even get a finish of his own. But I'm going to go with Joe Lauzon here. I kind of have a hard time justifying picking Chris Gritzmacher in the UFC. So I'm going to say the first round finish happens. So that being said, I don't mind a little bit of Lauzon and DK at all, just because his ceiling is so high, man. So I'm going to go with, once again, the veteran Joe Lauzon via a first round submission. And Max, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, it's hard to see the Joe Lauzon not finishing people like he used to. I mean, his last few fights have all been controversial, close decisions, like the loss to Stevie Ray, the loss to Jim Miller. I mean, those were controversial. Even the win over Marcin Held, obviously was knocked out in his last fight against Clay Guida. And so he's not really going to be the same Joe Lauzon you grew up loving, the killer that came off The Ultimate Fighter. But you made a good point, Kelton. You really don't know what to make of Chris Gritzmacher. He's a tough guy, but he doesn't really do anything overly well. And at least in his last fight against Davi Ramos, I thought he looked a little undersized at lightweight. And he has been submitted twice in a row. This could be a real slow fight should it go past that first round and Lauzon's not able to get it done. But just maybe it's wishful thinking, but I just got to think that Joe Lauzon, that first round, still has that killer instinct, and he's going to snatch up that submission somehow in the first round, get that choke or something, get a big win under his belt. This is a very favorable matchup for him on paper, and to me, it seems like this is the opportunity for Lauzon to get that job done.
Just one thing. I think Davi Ramos is going to make a lot of guys look undersized at lightweight. That guy's massive. Will, what do you think of this fight?
It's tough watching Joe Lauzon, like Max was saying there. It's just when you've been watching for as long as probably we all have of Joe, like for a year. I can't remember how long he's been in the UFC, but I've been watching this guy for years. And the amount of bonus money he's acclimated and just the fights that he's put on, it's really hard to kind of see this version of Joe Lauzon who's pretty much boom or bust. Either gets you out in the first like he did with Diego and Takanori Gomi, or he starts taking beatings from people like Stevie Ray. Like Stevie's a guy I know very well, a guy that I've known for many years. But if Joe Lauzon was in his prime there, he would have had him out of there, I think, very, very quickly, especially going into that second round. But he faded, and I never actually thought I would pick a UFC fight where I thought Chris Gruetzemacher would actually win a fight, but I think he can win this fight. I think that Joe's going to come out and go for it and see if he can take this guy out. I think if he's still around in the midway part of the second round, I think he can start to take over this fight. But there is that the factor like Joe is very, very, very a veteran of the sport. He might decide he wants to take this to the ground, where we have seen Gruetzemacher dominated a little bit and lose to kind of guys who are good on the ground. So I'm going to take a shot on Chris Gruetzemacher just because I would like to see another fight. I like to see just a guy kind of unheralded come in here and try and take out kind of the old guard. I'm just kind of going dog or pass in this one here. So I'm going to go Chris Gruetzemacher. I think it's going to be close. If you're confident, I don't know how people can be confident betting him personally, but there is people out there. We know people out there that are betting on him, and I wish you all the best. So I'm staying well away from this fight betting wise. I'm going to go Chris Gruetzemacher, split decision for that one.
Yeah, I didn't really touch on the betting line so much, but honestly, I mean, I am picking Lauzon, but I do think that line's off. If you want to take plus 150 on Gruetzemacher just to test to see if Lauzon gasses himself out here, I don't hate that play at all, man. So yeah, I do think it's a dog pass situation there. But moving on to the next fight here, man, this is a good one. We got Ray Borg, minus 275, taking on Brandon Moreno, plus 235. And Will, I'll start with you on this one.
Good fight. Very, very good fight. I love the flyweight division as a whole, and I like these guys, fighters as a whole, to be fair. So I just see Ray Borg being far more better in the takedowns, the passing. I think that Brandon Moreno's going to accept getting taken down, and I think that's kind of going to be his downfall. Ray Borg is a guy that I think a lot of us have seen come through, really solid fighter, beat some really tough guys, and gave his all against Demetrius Johnson and had opportunities where he did take him down. But then just the complete game of Demetrius Johnson just came into full effect there, where he sweeped him. And like the guy, I think he's the best fighter. I think a lot of us will agree he's probably the best fighter in the UFC. And it showed there. But the way I see this fight, I just see that he can be controlled on the ground. We've seen it. Dustin Ortiz did it in the first round there. Up to Moreno's credit, he came out in round 2, caught him with a beautiful head kick and managed to finish him. And you have to be careful with your P's and Q's on the ground with Moreno, because we've seen the Lewis Smoker fight, and the guy's obviously got a pretty vicious squeeze if he can catch you. I just think that Ray Borg's a little bit too far ahead in the grappling and the control aspect of the game. On the feet, I think that Moreno is probably the more explosive guy, but Ray Borg has been improving his striking with Brandon Gibson, Jackson Wink. I just think the ground game is going to be a big thing in this fight, and I think that Ray Borg is going to get him down. He's going to pass. I don't think he stops, and I think it's going to be a 30-27 win for Ray Borg. And I'm looking very closely at Ray Borg on DraftKings because I think he can accumulate a lot of points there. So Ray Borg for me in that one.
Yeah, I think Will nailed it there, man. There's levels to this game, and I truly believe Ray Borg is a step, maybe even 2 steps above Brandon Moreno here. And Brandon Moreno has shown moments of brilliance, and I'm going to admit it, I've lost a lot of money betting against Brandon Moreno, so who knows here. But yeah, Ray Borg is kind of, if anything, maybe even a better version of Brandon Moreno. Like Will said, fought his ass off against Demetrius Johnson, had moments of his own. But man, I think 25 minutes of experience in there with the greatest fighter living today, I think that's going to help Ray Borg. I think that experience means a lot, and I think he might even be hungrier than ever. And man, it's just a good stylistic matchup for him. So I think the line is absolutely warm. I truly believe that it's actually Brandon Moreno submission or bust. I think really it's going to be either a Moreno submission or Ray Borg decision. So looking at the props here, man, I mean, Brandon Moreno wins by submission is plus 885. So if you're into props, man, that and Ray Borg wins by decision, I see that around even money. So if you're into those kind of things, I think that might be a nice, sweet little hedge there. Moreno submission plus 885. That's a hell of a line. But yeah, I got Ray Borg here, man. I think he gets Moreno down, holds him down, but probably wins the decision here. Won't say too much about this one. Max, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have too much different than what you guys already alluded to. Ray Borg, obviously the last flyweight to be added to Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson's kill list. But it's just a really favorable matchup for him overall. He has that constant pressure, that strong offensive wrestling, especially in only a 3-round fight. It seems on paper it's a very favorable matchup playing into Ray Borg's hands. And one thing I actually wanted to point out is Brandon Moreno in his last UFC appearance against Sergio Pettis, man, to me, it just kind of seemed like his inexperience started to show a little bit. He, after that first round, just really had a hard time with Pettis' striking. He was overextending on his striking, opening himself up for a lot of takedowns. And to me, it's Ray Borg is one of the best wrestlers in the division, especially offensively too. That plus 885 submission prop. If Moreno's gonna win, to me it's gonna be a guillotine choke on a deep takedown from Borg. But Ray Borg, I can't really see him making that smaller mistake like that. I think the constant pressure in the wrestling is going to be too much. Ray Borg unanimous decision is my pick.
All right, so moving on to the headliner of the prelims, we got Karolina Kowalkiewicz minus 185 taking on Felice Herrig plus 160. And Max, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, as a fan, I love to see Felice Herrig succeed. I mean, she's really paid her dues, and at age 33, she seems to really be coming into her own as a fighter, showing real strong improvements every time out. Most recently, especially like a high fight IQ, and it really seems like this is the step up in competition she deserves and has been really waiting for. Kowalkiewicz, obviously, we know her only 2 losses are to the champion or former champion Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Claudia Gadelha. She does have that big win over Thug Rose. I believe that was UFC 201. And she's that strong, active striker with constant movement that really frustrates her opponents. And I can see her having success against Felice Herrig there. Where Herrig definitely has the advantage, though, is on the ground. And I don't think anyone's going to deny that. She has real slick grappling, technical jiu-jitsu flow, working with Jeff Curran here in Chicago. But knowing Karolina, it's hard to imagine she gives her that opportunity to do so because she is a lot tougher to get down than you would think. We saw Claudia Gadelha get her down, but other than that, she's been real strong and really able to manage distance in her fights. This could be a back-and-forth battle. I could either see it being a tale of 2 fights here where Felice Herrig does get her down and controls but also gets picked apart on the feet, or just kind of a back-and-forth brawl on the feet, too. I could see that happening as well. I'm going to go Karolina Kowalkiewicz by split decision. Would not be surprised if Felice Herrig gets another win under her belt, and I'm staying as far away from the betting on this fight as possible.
Will?
Yeah, I actually like the fight. I think it's the right fight for Felice to get that step up because since she came back from that loss from Paige Van Zandt, you can see that the confidence is back. I think she's in the right place personally outside of the sport when we don't see her there. So it's nice to see her just her life get back in order, and her fighting career has got back in order through that. And she's looked great. I think her wrestling, her grappling, it's looked really, really good. I think her striking has really improved in that little time span since she's came back. For me, I just think Carolina is I think she's the faster striker. I think she's got faster hands. I think one of the things that popped into my head when I was initially thinking of this fight was potentially if they clinch up and can Felice initiate a takedown and get from there. And I think she possibly could. Then I went back and watched the Rose and Carolina fight, and Carolina was very, very good from the clinch there, unloading with combos and stopping Rose getting anything off. I just think the fast hands of Carolina and the versatility on her striking is going to be a little bit too much for Felice. But like, I'm not counting Felice out either. I think she's got her head in the right space. I just think that Carolina's a little bit better, and she's coming off that big loss to Claudia Gadelha where she got caught. She'll want to get herself back in the mix, especially if Rose wins her fight against Joanna. She's going to be right in line because she's already got a win over the champion. So I'm going to go Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I'm going to go a unanimous decision.
I think this is an insanely tough fight to call, man. I'm really struggling with it, but honestly, I think this is Felice Herrig's fight to lose here. I think if she goes in there and fights a smart fight, I think she should, I wouldn't say not have any problems, but I think she should be able to successfully take down Carolina, grind her out, maybe even get a sub. I think that's a huge possibility. I think she could do that. I think she has an advantage there. Now, I don't think she's going to absolutely manhandle her like Claudia Gadelha did. I mean, I don't know if any of you have seen Claudia Gadelha in person, but that woman is she's massive, and Felice Herrig does not quite have that amount of bulk on her, but she can get takedown. She does have decent wrestling. She does have great grappling. So I think if she comes in, fights smart, she could pull it off. The thing is, man, with all the improvements she's made, actual technical wise and mental wise. I mean, the mental is the biggest thing with Felice Herrig. That's where she turned the biggest corner, getting her head right. So I don't know with the fight with Courtney Casey. Now I had a decent sized bet on Felice Herrig there, but she was making me sweat, man, because I felt she once again she had a huge advantage. She could have taken Courtney down and grinded her out, but she chose to strike with Courtney Casey, and I feel like it was a little bit of the mental thing with her in that fight, man. I feel like her and Courtney Casey, they were going at it a little bit verbal wise, and I think Felice wanted to stay on the feet and punch her in the face. I think that's what it was. She didn't want to take her down. She wanted to stand and punch her face in. So I don't know, man. I don't know if I can absolutely trust Felice to go in there and take down Carolina and grind her out or submit her. And the thing is, Felice, she does have decent striking. She has a very long Muay Thai history. If you go back, she has Muay Thai fights over a decade ago. She's got that experience, but Karolina Kowalkiewicz can strike her ass off, man. She really was probably the first girl to put Joanna Jedrzejczyk in some serious trouble in that fight she had against her. Rocked Joanna badly in that fourth round. Carolina's no slouch, so I think this is a really tough fight. I do think it's Felice's fight to lose, though. I think if she goes in there, she fights perfectly, she does what she needs to do, she's going to get it done. But I am going to pick her as an underdog. But the thing is, I feel like there's a couple better underdogs on the card here. So I was happy to pass. I'm happy to not trust Felice fully. And I'm really looking forward to this fight, though, because, I think it's a cracker. And I'd like to see Felice get it done, though. I'm a fan of Felice, so we'll see what happens, but I'm going to go with Felice Herrig via a 29-28 split decision here. So did I get to all you guys? Yeah, I did. Okay, moving on to the next fight, man. Moving on to the main card, that is, we got Al Iaquinta, -115, taking on Paul Felder, -105. And I'm going to start with Will on this one.
I'm looking forward to this fight. I think I'm a fan of Al. I like his. Sometimes I like his ramblings on social media, and sometimes I don't. I think he goes a bit far with it sometimes. But I just want to see this guy fight more. I think he's got a lot of potential to be a really good fighter in the lightweight division, and potentially give some guys some tough fights. But it's just his inactivity kind of scares me a little bit. But then he's coming into these fights really fresh, hopefully no injuries. I think he's fell in love with his striking a little bit, and I think he's been given some, especially the Diego Sanchez fight was a very favourable fight. Diego is my favourite fighter of all time, but it's literally the ghost of Diego Sanchez at the minute. He's not the warrior he once was. And but his shots that he hit him with and took him out with were really impressive. Really like sitting back and waiting for the shots to become available and then just taking him out viciously. The Masvidal fight was a little bit iffy, I thought. I thought he did just enough to win, but I thought it was close, like probably everybody else. I just think that with Paul Felder here now, he fought in Glasgow last June or July, and he was like, he is one of the nicest guys I think I've ever met inside the sport. He had I think his dad passed away at the beginning of his training camp, which was 2 months beforehand, and we got really close with Duke Rufus and the team that week, and we managed to spend a lot of time with him and his family. And I was there when he was cutting weight, and that guy struggled to cut the weight, but came out and says he's going to give the best performance that he's ever given in the UFC. And I think he did. I think he went out there and he fought a really good fight, waited for Stevie Ray to make the mistake of clinching up, and when he found that opportunity to throw that knee straight up the middle, he delivered some vicious ground and pound on top of that and silenced the crowd. Then he went on to the Charles Oliveira fight, and that was a little bit of a red flag for me, but for the simple fact that he decided to play about with Charles Oliveira on the ground, and I was like, dude, you don't want to be down there with that guy because he can catch you at any moment. But maybe he's making those improvements being at Rufus Sport where he feels confident and comfortable to be in situations with a guy like Charles Oliveira. And first round, he got through it. Second round, I thought, like, just stay on your feet. You can establish your striking. Even though I thought Charles Oliveira was doing pretty well with the striking in the brief encounters that they had there. Then he decided to go back to the ground again. I was like, I think you can win this fight on your feet. But once he gets that ground and pound off, the guy's vicious. He's got vicious elbows. Once he hit Charles once with a big shot, he was looking for a way out. He was tapping. The ref wasn't seeing it, and then he just unloaded with some big strikes. I've been really tempted, I don't know why, to bet Iaquinta in this fight. And I think he's minus 110 over here in the UK. I'm going to wait it out a couple of days and see if maybe it's close to plus money, which I'd be really surprised if that actually went there. But I'm going to go, I think it's another close fight. I'm going to go a split decision for Iaquinta. Will I make a bet on it? I'm not sure. I see other spots on the card that I like, but I think this is going to be close.
Yeah, I think this is an insanely hard fight to call, man. What really bugs me is it just Iaquinta has all the skills in the world, man, but it just doesn't seem like his heart is completely into the game, and that's what really gets me and what kind of is stopping me from making a play in Iaquinta here, because I do think he is the more intelligent MMA fighter and probably has the more well-rounded game. He has that wrestling background. I know he's worked on his striking so much and he's turned himself into one of the best boxers in the division, but he does have that wrestling background, and that could be the key to victory here is using his wrestling. But man, I just don't know. I don't know where Iaquinta's head is at. I mean, the only fight he's had in the last 4 years was against, like Will said, the ghost of Diego Sanchez. So do we really know where this guy is at against the real top 15 guys in the division? And that's exactly what Paul Felder does. I rank him somewhere around, 14, 15, 16 in the UFC. So I don't know. I think on the feet, Iaquinta's probably, he has the better hands, but I think Felder has a little bit more tools on the feet. I feel like he's better in the clinch, and we could see a situation where it's really close on the feet. Al decides he wants to use that wrestling that he does have in his back pocket, and maybe it gets tied up in the clinch and Felder rips him up there. So I really don't know, man. I mean, I feel like this fight could go a million different ways. So, I mean, really any kind of breakdown I hear on this fight, I'm like, yeah, I could see that happening. I have no idea what's going to happen here. So I don't know, man. I'm going to go with Iaquinta, though, just because I am a big fan of the guy, and I do think he has all the skills in the world and probably is a level above Paul Felder, in my opinion. So I think he can box up Felder here. I think he can stay away from that clinch where Felder is so strong, and I think maybe he can land a takedown or two. So I'm going to go with yet another split decision. I'll say Iaquinta 29-28 split decision. Max, what about you?
Man, on any other card, this would be the people's main event, like they like to refer it to. Unfortunately, this one, you got quite the high-profile matchup in the main event, so I think that I don't think anything's topping that. But Paul Felder, after kind of bouncing around to a few different places, he started in Philadelphia, he's been at Jackson's a little bit. He's settled in nicely with Rufus Sport in Milwaukee. I mean, he's got quite a few guys around his weight class that it shows that he's working with. I mean, you got guys like Ben Askren, Anthony Pettis, Bilal Muhammad, Mike Biggie Rhodes, Gerald Mercier, JP St. Louis, dare I even say CM Punk. But he's on the best run of his career right now, and that's definitely shown in his last few fights. And I was really impressed with his last fight against Charles Oliveira. I mean, he got taken down right away, and he fought out of Darshchok's left and right, and he really used his defense and kept himself out from getting submitted by a guy who really can submit you right away, and that's where he's most dangerous. Iaquinta, the inactivity always is going to be a cause for concern, but, man, he has some crisp technical boxing. Really shows his work with Ray Longo. And like you said, Kelton, he's one of the best boxers in the division, and I think he probably has one of the most powerful right hands in the division of anyone. We saw what he did when he came back to the ghost of Diego Sanchez, but it was kind of the same thing he did against Ross Pearson and Joe Lauzon back 2014. So where I see Felder having that advantage in the clinch and with the kicks and his spinning attacks, I really see Iaquinta being patient with his boxing and landing that big bomb and following up and putting that flurry and putting him away. And I'm really tempted to jump on that -115 line for Iaquinta. I'm going to go with Iaquinta by a second round TKO. And man, it's a very intriguing, almost even money line right there.
All right, man. Speaking of intriguing, we got a hell of a fight here. We got Michael Chiesa, -140, taking on Anthony Pettis, +120. And I'm going to start with this one, man, because I do have a very strong lean here. This is my second play of the night. I do have 4 units on one Michael Maverick Chiesa. So basically the biggest thing here for me is Anthony Pettis at this point. He is he's on my fade list. It seems like the game has passed him by. He could be a USADA victim. There's just a number of things, a lot of question marks with Anthony Pettis. I think the whole thing with dropping down to 145 pounds, we're talking about career desperation. What kind of things did he do physically badly to his body trying to make that cut? Because that is one of the most disgusting cuts I've ever seen in my life. The way he looked for that Charles do Bronx Oliveira fight was really quite concerning, and I don't know what kind of damage he did to his body trying to do that. And the Max Holloway as well, trying to make the weight there. He didn't make it, but still damn near killed himself trying to do it. He bounced back. He came back to lightweight. He did beat Jim Miller. But then in his last fight against Dustin Poirier, I mean, we are talking about a top 10 guy in Dustin Poirier, but it's a matter of how he lost. It just seems like at this point, it's very sad to say, because what an exciting guy Anthony Pettis was back in his prime. But man, this sport doesn't have happy endings, man. Sometimes time passes people by, some sooner than others, and I think the sport has passed by Anthony Pettis, and it's kind of a sad story. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was the first MMA fighter on a Wheaties box. I mean, we're talking that kind of hype at the time, but really things have gone very, very down south. And I mean, if we're looking at Anthony Pettis' only 2 wins within the last 4 years, we're looking at Charles Oliveira, who, in my opinion, is a habitual quitter in the octagon, and then Jim Miller, who is, I should say, way past his prime there. And if we're looking at the weakness in Anthony Pettis' game, it always seems like he's a little outstrength. It seems like the guy really just never has a strength advantage. He's not very strong, and it's his grappling. It's getting I shouldn't say his grappling, because the dude's fucking amazing. He's an amazing grappler and catches guys a lot, but it's him getting controlled. It's the Eddie Alvarez fight. It's guys making it ugly and grinding him out. It happens over and over. And when we're talking about Michael Chiesa, we're talking about not only one of the biggest lightweights in the division, but one of the most physically imposing, just strong grapplers, tricky grapplers. Michael Chiesa is an insanely tricky guy. One does not simply submit Beneil Dariush the way he did. Just amazing. Submitted Jim Miller. Just Michael Chiesa is a very good fighter, and don't take anything away from that loss against Kevin Lee, because Kevin Lee is going to be a top 5 lightweight for a very long time. The kid is the future. So I don't take that loss in high consideration, and I feel like Michael Chiesa, not only does he have the X factors like Pettis' career falling apart going for him, he has the stylistical advantage. I feel like he can push Pettis up against the cage. I feel like he can land those takedowns. I feel like he can pound him out, maybe even get a submission of his own. I just feel like this is, if you're looking at the wins of Anthony Pettis, like I mentioned, this is not an old man like Jim Miller and Gilbert Melendez, or a quitter like Charles Oliveira. Michael Chiesa is a serious dude who comes to fight. And if we're talking about Pettis' path to victory, we may as well. Obviously, I mentioned the dude is lethal off his back. He has amazing defensive jiu-jitsu, but Michael Chiesa, I mean, other than the Kevin Lee fight, we really haven't seen the Masvidal submitted him. But we're talking about Chiesa. Masvidal is a welterweight. Anthony Pettis is a lot smaller. I don't think that's going to be happening. And Kevin Lee, again, he's a very strong guy. And then if we're talking about Pettis' strength, his kicks, his very lethal kicks. But looking down Michael Chiesa's record, he has no TKO KO losses except the Joe Lauzon fight. That was a doctor stoppage. Look into it. Don't be mistaken there. Joe Lauzon did not finish him. That was a very nasty cut above the eye. So, man, I feel like worst case scenario, I just don't see it happening. I don't see a fluke KO. I don't see a fluke submission. I feel like this is Chiesa's fight all day long. I feel like he should impose his will, push Pettis up against the cage, make it ugly, and grind the guy out. If not submit him, if not pound him out. So I like Chiesa wherever the fight goes, and I do have 4 units on him. 3 of those were at plus 107, and then 1 of those was at plus 115. So about 4 units to win 4.3 there. So Michael Maverick Chiesa gets it done via, I will say, a 3rd round TKO. Will, what do you think of this one?
This is rough. This is a rough one for me because I'm a staunch Pettis brother fan, especially Anthony. When I was having some hard times in my life, losing my little baby boy, Anthony Pettis reached out to me, and he was fighting Gilbert Melendez around that time, and just by him having the title fight, and it took my mind off the bad situation I was in at the time. And then I ended up meeting him in Vegas in the International Fight Week of UFC 189, and we spent a good hour together, and he sent me a package, and he's just a top-notch guy. But the fight game is a nasty game, and I think it's passed him by, and it sucks to say that because I'm a massive fan of him as a man and as a fighter. It's just struggling. He gets taken down predominantly at every fight now, and it's something that I think it was Izzy Martinez he initially started working with. I thought that would start to get better, and you look at the fights. I mean, Craig Guida got him down. Jeremy Stevens got him down. We had other people like Melendez got him down a little bit. So I struggle to see him getting taken down. Rafael dos Anjos absolutely tore through him at UFC 185, I think it was. And since then, I really don't think he has been the same. What I think he has to do in this fight, he needs to be on his bike. I think he has to try and establish that striking. Use those leg kicks, which he can use, and try and just get the respect very, very early, and try and keep Michael Chiesa back. The one big worry I have in this fight is if Michael Chiesa starts tangling up like he did with Beneil Dariush, because he's a big dude. Michael Chiesa has a really long frame, and if he gets on your body, he's really tough to get off. I mean, he's beat good guys as well. He beat James Vick back in the day, and Beneil Dariush, like we're talking. So he's beat legit guys. And the Kevin Lee fight was a little bit unfortunate. He got controlled down there. The Mario kind of stopped a little bit quick, but I think he was well on his way to going out in that fight. I think he has to pressure here. I think he has to cut Anthony off. He has to keep him against the cage. Use that black line around the octagon. Keep him in that space between the cage and that black line. And when he gets his chance, try and get his hands on him and get him down, just like Dustin Poirier did. When they got in that space, Dustin Poirier just went for it, got the takedown and dominated, and really he beat the fight out of Anthony Pettis in that fight. And that was, I never usually bet against fighters I really like, especially really good people that have been really nice to me in the past. But I went with Dustin Poirier in that fight, and I did not hesitate to bet that fight when I saw what the line was. And he really tore through Anthony Pettis in that fight. I just think he has to find a way to get his body on Anthony Pettis and get him down, because he will find. I think he will wear Anthony out, and I think he will find a submission. I've bet Michael Chiesa here. The line I thought it should have been flipped. I think he opened over here at plus 125. I missed that completely. I got plus 115, which I was happy with. So I got 2 units on Michael Chiesa to beat Anthony Pettis, and I'm going to pick him via a sub. I think eventually he gets into round 2, he wears on him, and then round 3, I kind of see the fight going like Beneil Dariush, where he gets a hold of him and he just doesn't let him go until he gets a finish. So I'm going to go a 3rd round submission for Michael Chiesa.
Max?
Yeah, to echo what you guys said, I mean, Anthony Pettis, he seems like a great guy. He's done a lot for the sport, a lot for the community as a whole, but it's really becoming clear he's not the same fighter he used to be, and he's not going to return to that championship-level caliber fighter that he once was. His last 2 fights against Jim Miller and Dustin Poirier, I thought showed a little bit of hope from his 2-fight featherweight stint, and as well as some of his previous lightweight fights before that. But the blueprint is out there to beat him, and even though he has done work with Izzy Martinez, like Will said, it seems like everyone still is able to do it. And Pettis, I mean, he still continues to struggle with getting taken down fight after fight after fight. Chiesa, he's proven that when he's on the ground, he's got that snake-like grasp, and he can control very well. And once he has that opening, he will snatch it up, whether it's a limb, whether it's a neck. And to me, that seems like a very favorable matchup in the world for Michael Chiesa. I do worry a little bit about the inactivity. He's only had 2 fights in 2 years. The Dariush fight was in April of 2016, and then he had the Kevin Lee fight last June, which he was only in there for a couple minutes now. And I do think his length and striking does open himself up for kicks, but Chiesa seems like he's a much smarter fighter than that to play at range with Anthony Pettis. And I think he's going to cut off the cage, get him to the ground, and continue to control him until he can ultimately snatch up the submission. And I really like how Will broke it down with going with that 3rd round submission where he's able to cinch it in. That's going to be my official prediction as well for Michael Chiesa.
All right, so moving on to the next fight here, man. This is just amazing. I mean, we're talking about 2 of the very best prospects, not just in the featherweight division, 2 of the best prospects in the UFC. We got Calvin Kattar, minus 135, taking on Renato Moicano, plus 115. And Max, I will let you start with this one.
Yeah, no one is talking about this fight, despite the 2 of them being the best up-and-comers in the division, both being ranked 5-1 combined record. Calvin Kattar, he completely outstruck Andre Fili in his UFC debut and more than held his own against a very high-level striker in Shane Burgos before ultimately landing that knockout shot. And one thing I've noticed about Calvin Kattar is he seems to strengthen the longer the fight goes, and that's something you really like to see out of up-and-coming guys like that don't quit. Moicano on paper, though, kind of seems like a technical nightmare for Calvin Kattar. He's very quick. He uses kicks. He stays at range. He's very patient, but also has really good timing on his counter-striking. And remember that this guy was favored against Brian Ortega and was pretty much 2.5 minutes away from likely winning a decision in that fight. I really liked Kattar's jab in his last fight. I can see him being strong and technical here and landing, but I think he's going to have a harder time landing than he did against Shane Burgos here. Renato Moicano moves really well, and he does time his counter strikes very well, and he is patient. And to me, I think he's going to be able to handle that distance management and kind of stay on the outside, land some leg kicks. I don't know if I see this fight being a huge action-packed back-and-forth brawl, but I do see it being very technically back and forth between 2 guys that have bright futures in the UFC. I'm going to go with a 29-28 decision, unanimous for Renato Moicano.
Will?
Great fight. I think outside what we had as the main event beforehand and the main event that we've now got, this is the fight that people need to have more eyes on, in my opinion. I think it's a really great fight. It was one beforehand that I was looking forward to, but when you sit down and you watch the fights beforehand, you can see that this fight's going to be very close, and it's going to be very technical in many aspects of the game. I really love the fight. Calvin Kattar, I'll be honest, when he first came into the UFC and I seen his record 16-2, and I'd seen the people he'd fought and seen some of his fights, I wasn't overly impressed with that. But then that Andre Fili fight, it just opened my eyes completely to, like, Andre Fili really had nothing for Calvin Kattar in that fight, and he really coming in as a debutant against Fili, who's had many UFC, to be honest with you. And then Shane Burgos, I was like, that's a tough fight for both guys. I really thought that Shane Burgos was going to put those hands on him, and he did it in some aspect. Like Max was saying, he established the jab, and like they're not fighters sometimes throw out there, he used that and pretty much landed jab after jab, and he doubled it up. Sometimes he tripled it up. He was a little bit open to the body, which Shane Burgos started making adjustments towards with body kicks and some ripping shots to the body. But yeah, I just think he's a really solid striker, very accurate, very precise. I think his striking defense is pretty good as well. The one thing I'm a little bit curious about is his takedown defense. I want to see what that's like, because I think Moicano, I think he can take him down. It's whether Kattar can stop that. I'm really interested to see what Renato Moicano comes into this fight, because in the fight with Jeremy Stephens, he was not really engaging the fight too much. And in the Brian Ortega fight, he was really engaging. He was out there, he was throwing a lot of big strikes, he was trading hands with Brian Ortega. So he looks to me to be a very adaptable fighter, very versatile, and just very good in many aspects of the game. I think both guys are going to be top-end fighters within the next 18 months, without a doubt. I've bet Renato Moicano. I got him at plus 130. I've got 2 units on him at plus 130. I just think he's got the game changer, and that is a takedown. I think he's got very good timing. Even though that one against Brian Ortega, still I bet Moicano in that fight, and I was gutted when he got finished in that one. You just can't be doing that with Brian Ortega. Got a little bit too confident and then paid for it. But I just think he is the more well-rounded fighter. And I can see some people agree with me in saying, because I've seen people say Kattar is like the next coming at 145. I'm not on that train yet. I think he's a really good fighter, but I think Moicano has more tools. I think on the feet, they're pretty close. Maybe I give the edge to Kattar, but I think he has a ground game that can beat Kattar here. So I'm going to go a 29-28 decision for Moicano in that one.
Yeah, man, I'm a huge fan of both these guys, and they've won me some money, man. Kattar as an underdog against Shane Burgos. Moicano as an underdog against Jeremy Stephens. Both great cashes there. I'm a huge fan of both these guys. Now, what I really want to see happen in this fight, and Will mentioned in a little bit, I want to see Calvin Kattar tested on the ground, man, and Renato Moicano is the perfect guy to do it. Now, when it comes to the striking, I kind of feel like Calvin Kattar has the better boxing, but Moicano, he probably has the better overall striking game. I feel like he can land some leg kicks in there, slow Calvin Kattar down, because like Max said, Calvin Kattar gets better as that fight goes along. So it'd be very wise of Renato Moicano to use those leg kicks early on, slow him down. Now, Calvin Kattar's wins, I haven't entirely been as impressed with him as I've been Moicano. Now, don't get me wrong, I've been extremely impressed with Calvin Kattar, but his 2 wins, Andre Fili, for being honest, Andre Fili is, I don't want to say a jobber, but he's kind of just that middle of the road guy, if we're being honest at this point. And then against Shane Burgos, I have always said I find him to be a little overrated. He leaves a lot of holes defensively, and Calvin Kattar was able to find that hole and knock him out. Props to him, he did it. But Shane Burgos was he was starting to eventually figure Calvin Kattar out, and he won that second round. And I don't think it was all that close. I thought Shane Burgos had a very, very good second round there. Now, in the end, it didn't matter. Calvin Kattar exposed that hole of his and knocked him out. But Moicano does not have any holes on the feet. The guy is very sound, and I think, like I said, I think overall he has the better striking game. Kattar probably has a little bit better hands. I think it's a fairly even match on the feet, but like I mentioned, that ground game, Renato Moicano, he hasn't shown it a whole lot in the UFC, but he is a extremely talented grappler, and I think he might be able to take down Calvin Kattar here and maybe even submit him, maybe just grind him out. But I think with more tools on the in an overall MMA game, he has more tools. He's a more well-rounded guy, and even on the feet, he's got the better kicks. So I definitely disagree with Renato Moicano being the underdog here. I am going to pick him, and I will say he gets it done by I'll say 29-28 decision. So yeah, I got the underdog here. I'll say Renato Moicano, but passing from a betting perspective, might have a little bit of Moicano in DraftKings. We'll see, but yeah, I'm going to go with Moicano and complete the trifecta there. All three of us picking the underdog in that spot. So moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we do have the championship rematch. Man, we got Rose Thug Namajunas plus 110, the champ as the underdog, taking on Joanna Jedrzejczyk minus 120. I'm going to start out with this one, man. So, have you ever seen somebody knock somebody out so viciously in the first round and be the champion and be the underdog? It's a very strange situation, and I'm very, very happy to say that Rose Namajunas is indeed my third and final bet of the night. And I actually placed this bet all the way back in January. I did catch up Rose Namajunas at a whopping plus 170. I got 2 units on Rose at plus 170 to win 3.4 units there. Basically, I just think that's an extremely value line. I think it's huge disrespect on the champ who just knocked out the woman she's facing only a few months ago, knocked her out viciously. I think it's high disrespect, and I think it's a case of she has Joanna's number. I think it's a lot of factors here, man. I think Rose Namajunas is absolutely the future of the division. She came into the UFC as a kid, wasn't there all mental, got torched by Carla Esparza, but she has come a long way since, technical-wise and mentally-wise. And like I've been mentioning all show, is these kind of fighters. This is the new breed of fighter. Those tall, lanky, rangy fighters. And the thing about Rose Namajunas, she's tall and lanky, but that girl hits like a truck. It's really amazing, and she's got such a good submission game to go along with it. Rose Namajunas, when her head is right, she might be the best female fighter on the entire planet, man. I think Rose is absolutely legit. We did not see a fluke a few months ago. She was the better fighter than Joanna Jedrzejczyk that night, and I wholeheartedly believe she is going to be the better fighter than Joanna Jedrzejczyk on Saturday night. And the thing with Joanna Jedrzejczyk, we're talking about the greatest strawweight of all time still, but I don't know, man. I don't know what it is, because it's not even just the Rose fight. Like I mentioned earlier, she was on Wobble Street against Carolina. She was hurt a few times against Claudia. And a lot of people were betting Jessica Andrade against Joanna just because we all see it. Joanna actually has a suspect chin, and I think the weight cut is getting to be a little bit too much for her physically. So I don't know what it is, man. She claims that she planned out the weight cut a little bit better this time. So we'll see how true that is, man. But seeing the champion at plus 170 against a woman she just smoked a month ago, that's a value bet for me, and there's no way I could pass that up. So I got 2 units Rose plus 170, and I think she gets it done damn near the same way she got it done last time. I think she this time knocks Joanna down and then snatches up a submission. So I'm going to say Rose Namajunas first round submission here. So 2 units, Rose Namajunas plus 170. She is my pick, and I do think she is, and still. Will, what do you think of this one?
I'm really looking forward to this one. I was so shocked when that fight went down in New York back in November, and I mean, she absolutely starched Joanna Jedrzejczyk, and like we've been seeing in fights, I think the background, the kickboxing, the Muay Thai background is maybe starting to catch up in Joanna, and with the vicious weight cut that she's supposedly having. That's the one thing that's kind of pissing me off. With the last kind of week or so, she's talking a lot about this weight cut, and fighters have bad weight cuts, and like we're talking with Brian Ortega, a really bad weight cut, I think, for the Moicano fight, and still never used that as an excuse, and came through in that one. But she's talking a lot about the weight cut and just talking about not talking enough about what Rose did to her, and Rose just outclassed her in that one. I'm still a really big believer in Joanna Jedrzejczyk. I think that when I look at both fighters, the better overall fighter is definitely Rose Namajunas. She's got a lot more to her game than what Joanna has. I still think Joanna is the better fighter in my opinion, better striker. But she just needs to get into a rhythm, and if she can get into a rhythm like she did in previous fights, she starts to go off on people. And confidence comes back, and that's what I'm kind of thinking could happen here. But I think she's going to come under siege in some parts of this fight, where she's going to be asked the question, does she still kind of really want this? Because, I mean, she's got all those demons are getting knocked out. She tapped the strikes, 2 big knockdowns in that fight back in New York in November. I'll be honest with you, I've been thinking about betting Joanna. I was looking at odds before we come on here a couple of hours ago. She was minus 107. And I'm thinking, do I make a play on that? Is she going to hit plus money? But it's one of those kind of bets I'm sitting back and having a look at. It might be one of those ones where I wait till the weigh-ins on Friday and see how she looks. See if she always looks terrible, to be honest with you, when she's cutting down to 115. I've never been the biggest believer in Rose Namajunas, but she's at that stage. She's really young. She's 24, 25 years old, and you can see she's made big progressions in her game. Mentally, Joanna couldn't break her in that back in November. That was a big thing to me. So yeah, I think if she can establish distance and establish maybe low kicks and get off really early, I think she could get a confidence and she could win a decision. I'm going to pick Joanna. I just think she's got that. She's the one that's chasing now, and we've seen when she was chasing beforehand, she looked absolutely vicious in doing that. Like Hilton, like you said, it could be simple as Rose just has her number, and I'm seeing a lot of people say that. So there's many people out there that are thinking the same thing. I'm going to go with Rose to win a very close contested fight, and maybe like a 49-48, 48-47, decision here. But I really want to bet Joanna because I've did it in the past and I've got some really good numbers on it. And I think if she gets to plus money, I think I'm going to end up throwing money on her. But we'll see. I'm going to pick Joanna. I'm going to go against a lot of other people out there and pick the Polish Destroyer.
Max?
Big question for me here is how Joanna will approach this fight. Joanna will approach this fight, given how the last one was so lopsided. Namajunas came into UFC 217 as a major underdog, but executed one of the prettiest, most technical, sound game plans to perfection with that big first-round knockout. And on paper at the time, Namajunas was not considered Jedrzejczyk's biggest challenge by any means. I mean, she had beaten the likes of Jessica Andrade. She had beaten Claudia Gadelha twice. Carla Esparza, even when she fought for the title. And we also saw during UFC 217, Joanna, doing the stuff with the Boogie Woman during her open workouts in the weigh-ins. She really seemed to be looking past Rose Namajunas. So it's going to be interesting to see how not only that fight affected her mentally, but the approach she takes this time. Namajunas has really improved, and what I love most about her is her fight IQ. It seems like she is very strategic in there, especially in that UFC 217 fight. And, man, plus 170 money for you, Kelton. By all means, I would have taken that day. And I agree with Will. If that money gets a plus money for Joanna Jedrzejczyk, that's going to be tough to lay off too, because she can very easily pinpoint her way to a decision victory using that really strong technical striking. But I like Namajunas' fight IQ, and I think it's just a good matchup for her. And I really expect her to mix in different techniques this time. So not only looking for to pick her shots on the feet, but also mixing in takedowns. And Jedrzejczyk has shown good takedown defense in the past, but Namajunas is a very slick grappler. And if she is able to get her down, I like what you said, Kelton. I think she can snatch up a submission. I'm going to lean ever so slightly to Namajunas, either via late submission or a decision, but could really go either way. It's tough to call, but I like the approach both of you took in grabbing the plus money for either fighter.
For sure, man. So moving on to this very, very interesting main event for the undisputed lightweight championship of the world. We got Khabib Nurmagomedov -500 taking on Max Blessed Holloway, the undisputed featherweight champion of the world, at +400. And Will, I will start with you.
Crazy. I would never. It's never even a matchup I've even thought about beforehand. And last night when I heard the news, I started scrambling to watch fights, and I was like, "There's not really much point watching fights because you know what both guys are going to bring." But just mad props to Max Holloway for stepping up 6 days' notice against the savage that is Khabib. The way I'm looking at it is like, what kind of state is the injury that Max Holloway had? Because he was supposed to fight, I think it was March 3rd against Brian Ortega, and got pulled from that one. I think it was an ankle injury he had. So what is the status and how is he looking? Obviously, he's did enough to get the fight, and the doctors have maybe passed him for that. But on 6 days' notice against a guy like Khabib, who's been in camp, ready to go, I struggle to pick Max to win this fight. I really do. I think he's a more refined fighter than what Tony Ferguson is. I think Tony has a lot of tools, but Max is the one thing I love, and I say it in every video that I make with Max Holloway. I love the adjustments he makes during fights, how he can go slow and then he can turn it up like he did in Aldo, and he broke Aldo with his speed and just turning up the pace and the output. But we've got to remember that he's moving up and Khabib is going to be the bigger guy here. And that one of the interesting things, so I was just looking through the records, like the last 10 people that Max has faced are all former lightweights, and he's beat them all. So interesting fight. It's hard to, I find it really hard to pick Max Holloway in this one, just with the time span of where the fight's coming and the opponent that he's facing. Khabib Nurmagomedov in that last fight with Edson Barboza was, I think he reminded everybody what this guy is really all about and the skill set that he has, and how he can just take the fight from out of nowhere and just you really don't have much of a chance. You've seen the face that Edson Barboza was pulling in that first round. He was like, this guy is totally different level to anybody that he's ever faced before, and he just struggled with that one. Super strength, unbelievable passing ability as well. The fight I always look to is Michael Johnson, where he's reaping the right hand and just pulling it and just beating him with the left hand the entire fight. As that fight went into the third round, he managed to trap the body part, the arm, of Michael Johnson, and then he got the Kimura from there. I'm going to keep it kind of short. I'm not going to ramble on. On my video, I rambled on for like half an hour about the Tony and Khabib fight. I'm picking Khabib. I think he stops Max Holloway. I think he's going to stop him via TKO, cut off the cage, get takedowns. I see Max potentially getting to his feet, but I just think he's going to rinse, repeat takedowns, and he's going to put a little bit of a beating on Max Holloway. But props to him for stepping up in this one. I would actually love to see Max win the fight personally, but I just struggle to see it.
Max?
Talk about the worst so-called April Fool's Day ever, finding out that Tony Ferguson gets pulled from this fight and in this fight getting scratched for the fourth time now. I got to echo what Will says. I don't really see a way Max Holloway can win this fight. I'm a huge fan of his. He can beat a lot of guys in the featherweight division. He can beat a lot of guys in the lightweight division. This just seems like it might be a little too much considering what the circumstances are. Max Holloway supposedly was injured. You know, we knew he had to pull out of that Frankie Edgar fight in early March. And a lot of reports were saying he wasn't going to be ready until International Fight Week. So it's interesting to see that all of a sudden he's coming in on 6 days' notice to face Khabib Nurmagomedov, who has been in camp for Tony Ferguson, who is a very similar style to Holloway in that they're both long, rangy guys who use quick hands and are able to snatch limbs for, using their long arms for submissions. But it's just hard not to see Khabib implementing that game plan and getting the fight to the ground, smothering Max Holloway, landing that good ground and pound, passing the guard with ease. I've gone back and forth on whether I think Nurmagomedov gets a TKO late or if it's a decision. Just to be a little bit different, I'll say he takes it by a unanimous decision. But to echo what Will said, props to Max Holloway jumping in, saving the card, keeping it, giving us a main event here.
Man, I'm going to be honest. I think the line at -500 plus 400, I think that's super disrespectful to Max Holloway, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Now, he does have the issues. He does have coming off the injury, weak notice, not enough time to prepare. But I don't know, man. I feel like Max Holloway is a very, very smart guy, and I think he knows that if he's not ready for this fight, if he isn't physically up for the challenge, I don't think he would take it. I think he's ready to go here, man. And the thing is, I'm not so worried about the size as well. That's another thing people are talking about, just the size. Now, Khabib will be the bigger guy, don't get me wrong, but if we're being honest, 155 is Max Holloway's future home, and I think if anything, he might be decently sized here. But man, Khabib Nurmagomedov, he is such a force, and I just cannot convince myself that Max Holloway is going to stuff the takedowns. I've tried so hard, and he has stuffed the takedowns of almost everybody he has beaten in this win streak. The best wrestler probably being Ricardo Lamas, but man, the difference between a Khabib Nurmagomedov takedown and a Ricardo Lamas takedown is just, it's astronomical. I do think Khabib should probably be favored here, but I think it's a wee bit disrespectful. I don't think plus 400 should ever be a number next to Max Holloway's name. Maybe we could see a situation here where he maybe stuffs a couple of takedowns at first and starts picking Khabib apart on the feet, because now I see a lot of people say that Khabib has no striking. He's terrible on the feet. Khabib's got some damn good striking, man. He's put together a nice little game there, but Max Holloway is the better striker, and if it stays on the feet, he will outstrike Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, could be a situation where he's a little worried about the takedown, so he's not throwing as much, but I think Max Holloway, being the absolute gangster he is, I don't think that'll be a problem at all. I think he will throw plenty. And there's also the thought of, will Khabib style? Will he be able to hold the gas tank for a 5-round fight here against arguably one of the best cardio machines in the UFC, Max Holloway? If it happens to hit that 4th and 5th round, even if Max is getting dominated those first 3, I don't think I would be all that shocked if he was the much fresher guy in there. So I don't know. And we could see a situation where Khabib wants to prove a point and tries to blow Holloway out of the water and completely gasses himself out trying to go for the finish. There's just a lot of situations that could happen here. I mean, we've seen some crazy shit in this sport, guys, and I don't know how surprised I would be, actually, if Max Holloway pulled this off. That being said, I just cannot pull the trigger. I think I'm going to make up for not betting Max by playing a decent amount of him in DraftKings, because, I think he really could give Khabib problems on the feet. I think he could, what people have been saying about Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson has such a good ground game. He's going to give Khabib problems on the ground like nobody else has before. Everyone that Khabib has taken down has basically just been a dead fish there. Max Holloway is not going to be a dead fish on the ground. He's going to try his hardest to work his way out of situations. And, man, if we were given this line at plus 400 and Max Holloway was given a couple months to train for this fight, I would take plus 400 in a heartbeat, but I don't think that would be a line if he was given that 2 months. But I can't bring myself to bet Max Holloway here. I think Khabib, although the line is inflated, he should be a big favorite here. I think probably the -250 range is a little more appropriate, but man, I would love to see Max Holloway pull this off. And we've seen some crazy shit in MMA, and I'm not going to sit here and pick Max Holloway or do anything crazy like that, but I do think he has a much better shot than a lot of people do think he has. That being said, I am going to go with Habib Nurmagomedov. His wrestling is just so strong. He's so smart about his takedowns. He's one of the things about Khabib that's so underappreciated is his fight IQ. He's not just a dumb, tough, strong Russian. The guy is extremely intelligent and knows how to win a fight. Obviously, 25-0, the guy knows what he's doing. So I just don't know if week-long, short notice, Max Holloway is going to be able to pull this off here. Now, another thing, the last camp he was training for a wrestler in Frankie Edgar, so he has been drilling that takedown defense, but it's Khabib Nurmagomedov, so I can't do it, can't pick Max, can't bet Max, but I'll have a little bit of him in DraftKings, so I'm going to say Habib gets it done by a 49-46 decision, and new first Russian UFC champion, Habib Nurmagomedov. Can't say that last name right now for some reason. But, all right, guys, that's going to be it. Ran down the entire, what was it, a 12-fight card here. Amazing night of fights. Of course, I'm going to ask these guys like I always do. I want to hear their prediction on fight of the night and their prediction for 2 performance bonuses. And I'm going to start it off here. I'm going to say the performance bonuses. I'm going to go with my girl, Rose Namajunas. I do think she gets that second time first round finish against Joanna, this time being a sub. And then for other performance bonus, I am going to go with Michael Chiesa. I think he gets that bonus by finishing the former champion and Anthony Pettis. And then as for fight of the night, I think this one's very, very tough. I'm struggling between picking Kattar Moicano or Iaquinta Felder, but I'm going to go with Iaquinta Paul Felder. I think that fight is going to be absolute fireworks, just the way they both fight, just the way these guys are mentally. I mean, we're talking about guys that have no problem going out there swinging it all and going for broke. So I'll go with Iaquinta Felder, fight of the night, performance of the night, Rose Namajunas, and Michael Chiesa. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I'm with you in Iaquinta and Paul Felder's fight of the night. I just think that could be fireworks. It could be a lot of fun. I think that's the one, when I look at the fight card, it really kind of stands out to me, not unless the main event gets really tasty and it starts getting good between those two. So that would be my pick for fight of the night. Performances of the night, I'm going to go with, let me see. I'm going to go with Zabit. I think if he's going to get a stoppage, he's going to look deadly doing it. I'm thinking look very, very impressive. And the other one, I will go with, let me see. I'm going to go Khabib. Actually, if I think he's going to be dominant over Max Holloway, I think, and if he is dominant, he's going to at least want another bonus on top of that. And if he does what I think he's going to do, I think he'll get another $50,000 bonus out of that. So that's my 2 picks there.
Max, who do you think gets these performance bonuses?
Performance bonuses. One I'm going to take that might be a little off is Mike Rodriguez. I love that matchup against Devin Clark, and I think he's able to score a finish, and it might even be a big one. The second performance bonus, man, this is tough looking up and down the card, but I'm going to go Iaquinta because I really like that matchup against Paul Felder, and I think he's going to be able to put him away. As far as fight of the night goes, man, I mean, there's about 8 different fights that qualify for potential options, but overall, man, I'm just going to stick with the main event, Nurmagomedov and Max Holloway, because even if Nurmagomedov doesn't have quite the same amount of success to get him down, that's going to be an action-packed fight from start to finish. And I'm really looking forward to that one. And knowing that it's the main event of the evening, it's probably going to have a lot of eyes and exposure more so than any other fight on the card.
All right, guys, so that's going to be it. I want to thank these 2 guys very, very much for coming on. I do appreciate their time and their excellent breakdowns. I mean, I've loved talking fights with Will for a while now. I've watched his videos for a long time now. Max, I've met him recently, but he's come on twice now. He's killed it both times. You'll see him back on here for sure. So I'm going to let them plug their stuff in a sec. Just going to run down my bets one more time. So I do have 4 units on Ashley Evans Smith, 4 units on Michael Chiesa, and 2 units on Rose Namajunas. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm always doing breakdowns like these, solo roundtable breakdowns. Sometimes I do some special videos. You can follow me on Twitter at MMAKelton. I'm down to talk fights with just about anybody. You can see my track bets on Capper Tech. I'm doing a little hockey betting now, killing it with that. But yeah, guys, I appreciate the support very, very much. Without the viewers, we're not up here talking fights on a live YouTube video. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. I'm gonna let these guys plug their stuff away, and I highly recommend checking them out because these are two very intelligent MMA consumers here in Will and Max. So Will, where can the people find you?
So you can find my YouTube channel. Just go search my name, Will Martin MMA, and you'll see my videos for the last 5 years on there. If you want to go and make fun of the early videos I did where I had no clue what I was saying and what I was doing, then by all means. But yeah, I get my videos out there usually on a Monday night. I got this one out on a Saturday, but I'm going to have to make another little one for Khabib and Max. But yeah, you can find me there on Twitter at Will Martin MMA. I'm always down to talk fights, and I'm not on Twitter as much because I've got a little baby girl that's running around. She started crawling, so she's going everywhere, and I'm chasing her. But I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and just go support all the other people that put out content. And like, we don't take money from this. There's lots of people in the industry who write for nothing, people that just make prediction videos because they're fans and they like talking about the sport. So go and support all the people that do that, and week in, week out as well. It's a lot of work. People don't realize how much work goes into making videos like this and writing articles and stuff like that. So please go and support them. And Kelton, thanks again for having me on. It was a blast.
Absolutely, man. My pleasure. Max, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Trademark MMA. Like Kelton, I'm down to talk fights with just about anyone out there. Love interacting with different people on Twitter, like-minded individuals like myself who have such a passion for the sport. I write and contribute for MMA Today News. So just did a big feature last week on Fortis MMA, growing team out of Dallas. Had an interview with Charles Bird, an interview with CES champion Chris Curtis and Alonzo Menafield too. A lot of content on MMA Today. I post that on Twitter, but that can also be found there too. Kelton, thanks again. Will, absolute pleasure getting to break down with you as well. And like I said, man, it's going to be an awesome card. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so can't stress it enough, man. Definitely go check these two out. Great work from both these guys. Thank you guys very much for coming on, and thank you guys very much for watching the video. But most importantly, enjoy those fights this weekend.